Please, thank you, everyone. Thank you, first and foremost, for Pastor Raymond and Ko Ali and the entire youth staff for giving me this opportunity so I can be here in front of you all today. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Pastor Raymond. And as you can see, yes, this yearly topic or this monthly topic is also talking about a life in calling. In week 1, we have emergency call by Pastor Raymond, how in the midst of our seasons and journey, we can have an emergency calling that is to fulfill God's plan within our life. The second week, we have Ko Ali talking about the show must go on, how it's God's show and not our show, so it must go on. And last week, we talked about terms and conditions from Jay Karen, talking about the responsibility that we have in owning up to our calling in life. Yeah. But for this week, let's move on to the next chapter, which is, there we go. Promise and providence. A life in calling, promise and providence. So the highlighted word is just 2 words, promise and providence. So it's talking about how there is promise in our calling from God Himself. But do not only look at the promise, but look at the providence, everyone. What is God's providence? God's providence is God's caring provision for His people as He guides them in their journey of faith through life, accomplishing His life purpose. And so, yes, it's a big responsibility. God's calling is not something that's easy to take in all the time. There will be ups and downs. It won't be smooth all the time. But just know that there is His providence, meaning there is His guidance, there is His support along the way. The main point from His promise and the main point from His providence along our promise in calling is that there is God's promise in each and every one of our calling. I truly believe that every one of you here, sitting in your seats, has a calling in life presented by God Himself. As Christians, we know from Genesis to Peter to Hebrew to Revelation that the Bible is full of God's promises in our life. And sometimes we can see how the people around us, our friends, family, even loved ones, can disappoint us, can fail us, can make us feel down, sad, disappointed, and etc. But we know that we have a God who is with us, a God that we can trust, a God that never and will never fail us, both now and forever. That is also a critical role within our calling. He is a God who gives a promise, yet He holds up to that promise. He is a God that doesn't just leave you like that, but is also there to guide you along your way, along your calling. So, how? After I say this unto you, that God is trustworthy, how can we be sure that He is faithful in our calling? Bagaimana kita bisa yakin bahwa Tuhan setia dalam panggilan hidup kita? So, the answer to that is pattern. Now, folks, when, example, you eat with your friends, janjian ya, jam 7 di Pakuan Mall gitu ya. Lalu mereka nggak datang sampai jam 9 gitu. Ya, mana? Where are you? Lalu, oh, I was late, blah, 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 blah. So the next time when they ask you to eat dinner with them at 7, do you expect them to come at 7 or do you expect them to be late? Now, that's the pattern that you can see that reflects around a character within a person. And so we can see here God's pattern. On the left is the promise, and on the right is where it is written in the Bible. Yang pertama, Abraham menjadi bapak segala bangsa di Kejadian 12 ayat 2 sampai 3. Bangsa Israel dibebaskan dari pembudakan Mesir, diambil dari Keluaran 3 ayat 8, kelahiran Yesus Kristus yang ditulis di Yeremia 23 ayat 5. And this age gap is 400 years. Jeremiah is in the Old Testament. So we can see how God's promises goes also for the long run as well. This took 400 years to fulfill. And so, last but not least, Roh Kudus yang diberikan kepada kita, that is written from Yohanes 14 ayat 16 sampai 17. And so you see, we can see how God's pattern within our promise, if you will, within His promise to His servants is real. There has never been a moment where God disappoints us. Yes, sometimes we can feel that God is not there. Sometimes we can feel disappointed, how there's ups and downs, and we can feel, where are you, God? Or like, why is this happening? But that's not Him. He never disappoints us. He will never, I assure you, He will never, ever fail us, let alone in your calling and in His promise upon your life. So, the significance of this proof, if you will, the significance of His pattern, of His promises, of His integrity, is that it's His reliable nature. We have a God that we can rely to. We can have a God that we can trust, who is trustworthy along the process, full of integrity, and who will never let us down in His word. Yeah. And so, now what? We now can see, yes, God has a pattern in His character. God is trustworthy. We can trust God. We can rely on God in our promises, in our calling. But so, now what? Well, taken from this month's topic, let's look into the story of Joshua 1, verse 10 until 18. It's a long paragraph, so I will have Ko Oli to read it out loud for you in BE. Ko Oli?
Lalu Yosua memberi perintah kepada pengatur-pengatur pasukan bangsa itu, katanya, jalanilah seluruh perkemahan dan perintahkanlah kepada bangsa itu demikian. Sediakanlah bekalmu, sebab dalam 3 hari kamu akan menyeberangi sungai Yordan ini untuk pergi menduduki negeri yang akan diberikan Tuhan Allahmu kepadamu untuk diduduki. Kepada orang Ruben, kepada orang Gad, dan kepada suku Manasye yang setengah itu berkatalah Yosua demikian. Ingatlah kepada perkataan yang dipesankan Musa hamba Tuhan itu. Kepadamu, yakni Tuhan Allahmu, mengaruniakan keamanan kepadamu dan memberikan kepadamu negeri ini. Perempuan-perempuan dan anak-anak di antara kamu dan ternakmu boleh tinggal di negeri yang diberikan Musa kepadamu di seberang sungai Yordan. Tetapi kamu, semua pahlawan yang gagah perkasa, haruslah menyeberangi di depan saudara-saudaramu dengan bersenjata dan haruslah menolong mereka, sampai Tuhan mengaruniakan keamanan kepada saudara-saudaramu seperti kepada kamu juga, dan mereka juga menduduki negeri yang akan diberikan kepada mereka oleh Tuhan Allahmu. Kemudian bolehlah kamu pulang kembali ke negerimu sendiri dan menduduki negeri yang diberikan Musa hamba Tuhan itu kepadamu di seberang sungai Yordan, di sebelah matahari terbit. Lalu mereka menjawab Yosua, katanya, segala yang kau perintahkan kepada kami akan kami lakukan, dan kemanapun kami akan kau suruh, kami akan pergi. Sama seperti kami mendengar perintah Musa, demikianlah kami akan mendengarkan perintahmu. Hanya Tuhan Allahmu kiranya menyertai engkau seperti Ia menyertai Musa. Setiap orang yang menentang perintahmu dan tidak mendengarkan perkataanmu, apapun yang kau perintahkan kepadanya, dia akan dihukum mati. Hanya kuatkan dan teguhkanlah hatimu.
Amen. Thank you, Ko Oli. So, in this text from Joshua 1, verse 10 until 18, that is the promise that God gives to Joshua. Joshua, as the next generation to lead Israelites into the promised land, he feels doubt, he can feel worry, just as Ko Oli said from his second week. But yet the show must go on. And yes, the show must go on. But yet there is God's promise, there is God's provision, there is God's providence in that calling. And so you can see the cause and effect of how the significance it means to have His promise in our life. Number one, it's His reassurance or comfort for Joshua. Number two, it's Joshua's foundation that becomes firm and strong. And last is Joshua has peace and security from God. Folks, if you're in a situation that you have a new responsibility that you have to own up to, or you have a calling that's very hard to do and to manage, don't you feel worry, doubt, insecurity, no peace in your heart? Oh, thank you, Evan. But that's the purpose. That's the significance of what God's promises means in our calling. Like I said before, God cares for us. He knows us. Yes, He gives you a calling. He gives each and every one of you a calling. But He doesn't just give you a calling and say, here, do it. Oh, whatever you want to do it. I know you can do it. No. He gives us a calling, yet He also gives us His reassurance, His comfort, His peace, His strength. For those of you who may experience it or have not experienced it, there's just something about God's promise as you know that He is trustworthy. Isn't that the most reliable source in your life, when God promises you something and you know it's from Him, isn't that the most, I can rely on that. Do you doubt God's promises in your life? Well, have faith, everyone, because there's nothing more reliable than His word and Him Himself. His reassurance and comfort for us means that we are at peace. We know, yes, Joshua goes from insecurities, so now he's like, yes, this is what I need to do. This is what my calling is. Sometimes when we do not know our calling in life, we may doubt, what is our future going to be like? And when you do something, you can be like, oh, is this for me? Is this for me? Can I actually do this? Are you sure it's not for my friend there who can talk good? You sure it's for me? I can't sing that well. Blah, 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 blah. But God's promises is there. That's significance if you can see it. God's promises is there to reassure us, to comfort us, just as He did for Joshua. Joshua can now feel, oh yes, this is my calling. Yes, this is exactly what I need to do. And yes, he's reassured that God is with him, which is the main thing. As God is with Joshua, it talks about his foundation. Joshua's foundation becomes firm and strong, so that his faith isn't easily shaken. And if you read the book of Joshua, you can see how that faith can be expressed to all your friends everywhere around you. As all the Israelites warriors won every single war that they went to, and they have confidence in God. That is also a beautiful thing that happens. And of course, with all of this, with all the reassurance, with all of the firm foundation that Joshua experiences, it gives him peace and security, which is also the main thing that can keep him wise enough to lead and has the strength to keep persevering to enter the promised land. But let's talk about more on Joshua 1, verse 16 until 18. As Kali has read it, these are the 16th, 17th, and 18th verse that he just read. And this is in English, but as you can see right here, these words here are all taken from the Israelites officers, or Israelites leaders, if you will. All of this word, every single text you see is the spoken word from all of the Israelite leaders, not from God, not from Joshua. So, if you read right here, you can see how God also provides a way. God also not only reassures Joshua, but He can also reassure Joshua from the support of Israelite officers. And yes, Joshua is younger than them. Israelite officers have more experience than Joshua. Israelite officers have worked with Moses, have talked to Moses, have chatted with Moses, etc., and etc. But as you can see, even the Israelite officers can have that same faith that supports Joshua in his calling. So the last point is that you gain confidence. When you have God's promises in your life, when you're reassured that this calling in your life is for you, you will have the confidence to do it. Say, for example, you're in Beihwei or whatever it's called. You will have confidence that, yes, this is my calling. Yes, this is what I need to do because God has provided with His provision and His providence in my calling. That's the security. That's the foundation that I talked about in the last slide. True confidence is not based on you having all the resources needed to take care of yourself, But true confidence is based upon the truth that God is faithful. I love this quote because God is all you need, my friends. Highlighted right here. God is faithful. And in the past slides, we talked about how God is faithful because His promises are always there for us. He fulfills His promises. He's a trustworthy God that we can rely on, that we can put our worries, doubts, insecurities, and He will just be there to guide us along the journey. But friends, when I talk about cause and effect, when I talk about what it means, never forget the significance of God's promises in our calling. This text, if you will, depends on how you see it. Each of us will have a different interpretation to this text. Each of us may or may not have experienced God's calling in our life, God's promises in our life. Some of us may not know what the significance is. To some of you, it can just mean this small, or some of you, it can mean this big. It's okay. We're all in the process of His divine plan. But do not underestimate His promise in your calling. Don't be so arrogant to think about, oh yes, this is my calling. What more do I need? But if I tell you, say you have a calling and God doesn't reassure you, would you still have confidence? Would you still have peace, security? Yes, this is my calling. But if God never tells you, like, this is your calling, are you too arrogant and stubborn to not listen to what He has to say in front of your life? Are you too arrogant and self-centered that you reject how much His promises means, His significance in that? So do not be self-centered in how you view God's promises in your calling. And if you say, but He's too far, but He's disappointed me in the past, but I can't feel Him, but He doesn't want to call me because of this, because I feel like I'm not worthy, because maybe I've done some pretty bad mistakes in the past. What can God do in my life? Now, that's a sign of arrogance, because do not belittle God's divine power and strength and His will in your life. God can turn even the most baddest human being in the world, the most sinful, destructive past, broken past. But if that person has a change of heart, I'm pretty sure that God can use him for divine plans, for His divine purpose. We talked about calling. This whole month, we talked about calling. But I also want to talk to you guys about purpose in life, because sometimes, most likely, we sometimes get confused on the difference between calling and purpose. We have to be wise enough, we have to be knowledgeable enough to know the difference between calling and purposes in our life. So, let me elaborate. Your purpose and calling are one. We all have a calling and we all have a purpose. But the general main purpose of us, every one of us, is to glorify God within, from us, or in every action that we do. Our life calling will have a specific area that is focused on that. Example, church, business, family, politics, whatever it may be. Purpose is essential as well, calling too. But calling changes within the different seasons in your life. So I say right here, your purpose and calling are one, but our calling can be in different forms. Okay, what do I mean by different forms? As you can see, I took an example from David in the Bible. From the left, you can see how David in his young age was a shepherd. And on the right, you can see David in his 40s already becoming king of Israel. As you can see, David, his calling at that time, when he was that age, was to become a shepherd for his father, for his brothers, for his farm, whatever it may be. The calling he has, the responsibility in taking care of the sheep, cattle, goats, and everything. But on the right, you can see his calling as now it becomes to be the king of Israel, the replacer of Saul. So, the purpose and calling are one. Do not worry. Do not worry on how, what if my purpose and calling are not in one? What if my calling is in a different area? Do I feel like I'm being left out? Am I not in the right path? It's okay. It's okay. Our purpose and calling are one. But of course, we talked about seasons. We talked about how we all here as teenagers, we're in a different chapter in our life. Sometimes we can move up to high school, middle school. Some of us are going to college after this. So your calling may change, but just remember that your purpose remains the same. I love this quote. It says, God doesn't need to know your ability. He just needs to know your availability. Everyone, God knows who you are. We are His children. We are His beloved creation that He has made us fearfully and wonderfully made. He knows us. We sin, but He calls us by name. He calls us by, hey, Ollie, hey, Brian, hey, Abigail. He calls us by name as we are children of God. So He doesn't need to know your ability. Oh yes, I have the ability to do this. I can play music. I can talk to people. I'm an extrovert. But my calling is like, but I can't do this. But I can't sing. I'm not confident, I'm not confident, Jay. I'm not confident, God. I can't do this. But do not focus on that. God doesn't need to know your ability. He just needs your availability. He just wants you to open up and say, God, use me. Use me for your calling. Use me for your life's purpose in my life. Like I said before, don't be so arrogant that you can't think that God can't use your life for something. God's divine will happen, whether you like it or not. But yet, don't be scared. I'm sure God has your best interest in heart. God also knows you, so He also knows the journey along the way, the processes. You can also see God's divine provision, as in, look at the people around you. In your new seasons of life, you can experience new friends, new mentors, new support system. And especially here, welcome to Ibadah Youth Surabaya. We are a community that helps one another. We are a community that is there for everyone. We are a community that wants to see you grow. We are a community that helps and support one another. We're like brothers and sisters in Christ. We're just here to help you and guide you along your way in your life calling, in your life purpose. God will also equip you in doing His life work. You will see it. You can see it. You will see it with your very eyes. Example, you're struggling with this specific part in your calling, but then God can put His divine intervention in your life and miracles will start happening. Strength, perseverance, and of course, His never-ending reassurance, His never-ending provision upon our lives, that He is always there for us and that He will never let us down. God can give us different callings, yet the callings will be aligned for the same purpose. What I mean by that is, look here again. David, from his shepherd years, he can learn what? Humility, responsibility, ownership, caring deeply for someone as sheep. He can care for the sheep well. He can also find courage, as an example, when he was taking care of the lion to protect the sheep. And that will also reflect when he is king. He can learn, as king, you have responsibility, but we also know how humble David was. We could also know how courageous David was, how much faith he had in God and doing His works. Faith in how, when he went to wars, when he asked God for help, etc., and etc., we can see that. We can reflect on how your calling will still be aligned, but yet His purpose is still one, that is to glorify God. If you read His books, if you see His character in the Bible, we know that David's calling is very down to earth. He's a very down to earth man who really just wants to do his best. He wrote Psalms as an expression to how he feels for the Lord, Psalms as a hymn of thanks for the Lord. So we know that his glorious purpose is that he is there to glorify God's name above all else. So I call for the Be'awi team to go in front. So friends, this is me last year. But first and foremost, this isn't me trying to show off, oh, I have my calling, I have my purpose. This isn't me trying to show off that I've received my calling, that I'm filled with purpose, I know what my calling is. It's not about that, folks. This was me last year in January 2023. Yes, that's Pastor Raymond praying for me. This was when Pastor Crystalline visited IFGF Surabaya. And on that day is when I received my calling and purpose in life. I was broken before. I felt like, what could I ever do with my life? I don't know what I was going to do with my life. But at that moment, I received my life calling, my life purpose. So yes, do not be arrogant to think that God can't use you for His divine plan in your life. And of course, never compare with yourself and one another. For if you compare yourself with one another, you will not be able to see God's blessings. You will not be grateful enough to see how much God has blessed you throughout His journey in life. So never ever compare. He calls you by name. He wants to know you. All of us sitting around here, I believe that all of us have a calling. It is not me trying to show off that I have my calling, I've received my purpose. No, but it's a testimony to tell all of you that what He can do to me, He will certainly do it unto you. Have you ever heard the calling? For it is Him who chose us first, not us who chose Him. For it is Him who died on the cross for us first, not us who had to suffer the punishment. God chose us for His divine calling because that's who He is. He cares for us. He gives us life purpose. Have you ever wondered, what do I want to do with my life? Or, I feel like this isn't it. There's something more to life than just doing this. Well, that is what will happen when you find your life purpose, when you find your life calling. Your life will never be the same again. I guarantee you. Your life will never be the same again. You will be filled with joy, everlasting peace in your life. You will find security. You will find what it means to do your best for someone, what it means to see God's character in everyone, seeing the good side in things, just reliving in His Word every day and always showing His character in all that you do. His reassuring role and impact in our life is so amazing and so special. His reassuring character is so beautiful, loving, and genuine. He's a God who cares. Like I said before, He's not a God that gives you responsibility and just hides away. He wants to protect you. He wants to guide you along the way. And that will certainly happen when you rely on Him too. Oh, sorry, I don't know what happened. So I close you with this quote. Even if we fail, God's promises, grace, love abounds in us even more. I wrote the word even if because as humans, we will fail. Yes, we will. We will fail and fail and fail again, for it is our sinful nature, our human nature to do so. But every time you do that, every time you feel like you fail, every time you feel like you're not worthy enough, just hold on to these words that God's promises, grace, love, mercy abounds in us even more, abounds in you guys forevermore. Don't be so arrogant. Don't reject His calling. Do not reject His ability that can transform your life into becoming the men and women that He wants you to be for His glorious kingdom. And so, never lose hope. Yes, the devil will always try to push you down, to put you down into your place, to make you feel like you're not worthy, to make you feel like, oh, really? You're never really saved, you know? He will always try to twist God's words in your life. But it is our faith, it is our strength in God to reject the devil's words and to have a strong foundation in Him and to see us the way He sees us, perfect in His image. What is the price of 5 sparrows, 2 copper coins? Yet God does not forget a single one of them. And the very hairs on your hair are all numbered, on your head, sorry. So don't be afraid, for you are more valuable to God than a whole flock of sparrows. He knows you. He knows you. From the moment He created you until now, He's always there to guide you along your way. So don't underestimate just how much of a value you are to Him. So I invite you all to stand up and let's renew God's words in our life. Let's renew over and over again just how wonderful He is in our life, just how amazing He is in our life, just how gracious He is in our life, that He still chooses us. No matter any circumstances, He's still there for us to provide His never-extending grace upon our life. And so, when we sing the song that Christ is enough, we declare with our faith, we declare with our hearts that He is actually more than enough for us.